Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming back from lunch to join us in this third session of the AALL Symposium. And welcome if it's your first time coming in today to follow us in the afternoon. My name is Alice. I'm one of the facilitators, and I work at ACU. So this session is about online resource development and how it enhances our learning experiences and also complement the human-centered all services at the institution. We're going to talk about maybe some of the approaches to online resource development at the different institutions, how they manage their processes, and what are the challenges and rewards. So this session consists of panelists from 3 different Australian universities who will speak about aspects of online resource development at their institution, and we will answer questions at the end. But if you have any burning questions that you think you're going to forget in the meantime, please put it in the chat and we'll try to keep track of that. Okay, so to introduce the speakers, we have Sue Gollagher. She's currently a learning advisor at James Cook University. She has been teaching academic language and literacy at universities in Australia and overseas for nearly 30 years and is currently on the Professional Development Committee for AALL and is co-convener of the English Australia Post-Entry English and Academic Language SIG. And then we also have Steve Johnson. He's the head of support for learning at Murdoch University. He is currently leading a collaborative project to develop academic and AI literacies across disciplines at the university, including the use of online modules delivered through the Moodle lesson tool. Sorry, somebody's speaking. We got to mute everyone. Okay, Leah is our third speaker. She has been working in higher education for 14 years and is working at Edith Cowan University as a team leader, a learning advisor, and a learning advisor. In her current role, Leah leads a team to deliver exceptional learning support to students at ECU. Leah is passionate about learning and teaching and fostering student success. Okay, so there you go. Here are our 3 panelists, our wonderful panelists, and we're going to start talking about what's happening at the institution. With the first question, how does your unit manage the development of online resources? And this could include things like, do you have a website or LMS, or use external resources or website tools, or work with a learning designer or assign learning skills or academic skills staff, embedding faculty in your all unit? What are the challenges and rewards? So they're going to try to cover a lot in 2 to 3 minutes each. So could I ask Stephen to, Sue. Sue was the first on the list of the speakers. So I'll start with Sue.
Okay, thanks so much, Alice. First of all, I just want to point out that even though I'm at James Cook University now, I'm actually going to talk about the online resources project that I worked on for Charles Darwin University up in the Northern Territory. I recently moved to a new position. So at Charles Darwin University, they've developed a suite of study skills and learning resources that actually live in their own website. I'll pop that into chat for you in case anyone wants to have a look at it later. So I'm putting it up there, warts and all, so you can pull it apart as you want. Now, it sits in its own website, and the reason why we decided to do that is because they wanted the materials to be in the public domain. They wanted it to be accessible to all students who may potentially study at Charles Darwin in the future. So it was all put together into this website, and the way we organised it is we had one learning advisor to manage the project. Back in 2021, we did have a website with materials, but it was all very content heavy. It looked like a content warehouse is what I would call it. It was just basically screens of text describing reading skills, for example, but with no interactivity or engagement. We started a project to reconceptualize the site and redesign it around a framework so that it would be pedagogically engaging and more useful for the students. We created a framework, wrote the content, and for short times we had a learning advisor to help us, but not very often because it depended really on the funding. The big challenges is that it's very time consuming and it's hard to design these materials while you're simultaneously trying to maintain your sort of current business, your individual consultations and your workshops. So that's basically the way we did it. One learning advisor supervising, occasional learning advisors contributing, and the occasional learning designer when the funding was available. So Alice, you might want to turn over to someone else.
You could turn over. Next is Stephen.
Oh, next is Stephen.
We'll pass the baton.
Okay, thanks. And thanks for the opportunity to join the symposium and talk about our development of learning resources. I'd like to really focus on two LMS sites that we have developed at Murdoch University. One of them is pretty well finished, although I really wanted to sort of acknowledge what Andrew was saying in the keynote. Everything, I think, is changing and needs to change with AI. So although that LMS site is finished, it's, I think, under redevelopment as well. So one is an LMS site for students and the other is an LMS site for staff. And the frameworks and I guess the theoretical underpinnings of those two sites are very different, but I wanted to sort of focus on that today. So just very quickly, our Support for Learning Centre comes under the Learning, Teaching and Technology section under the DVCE portfolio, which also includes peer learning, and in the Learning, Teaching and Technology section, also learning designers. So we have very close collaboration with peer learning and with learning designers. And the first LMS site, the Study Success Toolkit, LMS site for students, was developed in collaboration with learning designers, peer academic coaches, and the library. And in fact, we brought together two separate LMS sites into one so that it was easily accessible. It's got about 12,500 student users at the moment, and it includes a range of different resources, including Moodle lessons, H5P guides, and videos, and other sort of resources as well. It looks great, and it's been quite widely promoted across the university. The second resource is what we call a Pathways to Success LMS site for staff. And this is really very different. It's much more recent. So the other one's been around since 2019, essentially. But the LMS site for staff is also a community site, so it's self-enrollment. It's got just 76 staff users. But the premise and the design is very different. So it's designed to support collaborations for embedding academic and AI literacies into unit LMS sites. So it's really, I guess, a kind of a sandbox. Same technologies, so Moodle lessons, H5P guides, videos, but the aims are very different. And what we're doing at the moment is really trying to align those two LMS sites so that there is a consistent framework and a consistent approach. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen and Leah.
Hi, and yeah, again, thanks for having me here today. So I'm obviously working at ECU, and I'm leading our learning advisor team at ECU, and we have our online resources housed also in an LMS. Like at Murdoch, we are using Canvas, and we have our own sort of community site that we host on Canvas. We call this Academic Skills at ECU. And this is available to enrolled students and all staff at ECU. So unfortunately, I can't provide the link for everyone to be able to access those resources. So it is a course then that students can join, and then that appears in their dashboard, so it's easily accessible. The majority of our resources that we have on Canvas have been developed over time by our learning advisor team. We do also include some links to external resources and other institutions, as well as other publicly available sites at ECU. For example, the library site, we do provide links to some of their resources on things like referencing and researching and so on. So as I mentioned, most of these resources have been developed by the learning advisor team, and we've been really lucky that we've had some very highly skilled learning advisors on the team some who can work with HTML, which has been fantastic in being able to design our resources, as well as some with some H5P experience. So we've been able to embed some of those more interactive activities into our Canvas, as well as videos as well, to again make it a bit more interesting and interactive. So we do house our own resources, but then, and this is also promoted across the university, and often will be embedded into maybe into units on Canvas, and particularly into sort of assessment outlines and things like that. I think, as Sue mentioned earlier, some of the challenges that we face, the biggest one is that the time, being able to develop these resources. And I think it's, again, exactly the same as Sue, like, during semester, we're really busy offering our usual services. And so it's really kind of times like now at the end of semester that we have the opportunity to really work on resource development.
Thank you so much, Leah. So I'm going to go on to the next question. Again, we'll have Q&A at the end. See if I can prop my slide to go to the next question. There we go. So how are the online resources integrated with the other AALL services your unit or institution provide? You might have already mentioned a little bit about this, but another part, what do you see as a key role or importance of your online resource? So we'll go with Stephen to start this one, trading the roles.
Okay, so just returning back to those two mentioned, there is an alignment between each of those and particular services that we offer. So the Study Success Toolkit for Students, which was partly developed by our peer academic coaches, is very closely aligned to the work that our peer academic coaches do. And so the content of the toolkit includes things like getting started at university, breaking down assignments, time management, introductory academic reading, writing, referencing, and so on. And it's used quite frequently by our peer academic coaches in the consultations that they provide to students. So I see the main sort of purpose of that as really enhancing that work that the peer academic coaches are able to do, because in a 20-minute consultation, there's a limit to what you can do. So they're able to then refer students to the toolkit for further reference. And then the Pathways to Success LMS site, which contains really a lot of resources in development. There's a lot of Moodle lessons in there, and those lessons have been made specifically for particular units. And so this LMS site really complements the work done by the 8 academic staff that we have in Support for Learning, who are, we operate according to a hub and spokes model. So each member of the team is allocated to a particular school, and the real sort of underlying purpose of the Pathways to Success is to develop collaborations with unit coordinators to create support, particularly around major assignments in gateway units. And this support, in terms of the deliverables, has included, as well as workshops, it has included the development of Moodle lessons, which are scaffolding the work that students need to do to complete assignments in the unit. So that's a real synergy between the Pathways to Success LMS site and our embedding work.
Thank you, Stephen. Where are we at? Is it you, Sue, now? Who hasn't spoken? Sorry, I lost track. Okay.
I don't think I haven't spoken, nor has Leah.
Oh, sorry.
But anyway, it's okay. I'll go first. So basically, our website is used in many different ways. Like Steve and Leah mentioned, it's embedded into units. So we have our website in the public domain that anyone can access anytime. But like Steve mentioned before, we have a model where each of our learning advisors is connected to a different college within the university, and they will work with academics to embed hyperlinks to the resources into rubric and assessment instructions. All of the H5P files and the various interactive activities are kept on SharePoint so that individual learning advisors can clone them and adapt them for discipline-specific purposes within their unit. So it serves as support for students, but it also serves as a resource for our learning advisors. It's used constantly in our workshops, and it's used constantly in individual consultations as well. And in workshops, we'll get students to bookmark it so they can go back and practice later. So it's really become part of a support ecosystem around our students. The vast majority of students in Darwin at Charles Darwin University are low SES, first in family students. Many speak English as an additional language. Many are studying externally, and they need a lot of support. So we also embed links to the library, LibGuide sites, and support to student services there, so that it's almost like a one-stop shop where students can go for help when they need it. And that's my 2 minutes.
Thank you. Leah, sorry about that. Just go ahead.
All right, thank you. So yeah, I mean, we have our services that we offer in terms of like one-on-one appointments, drop-ins, academic skills workshops, and I see that our online resources really kind of stand alongside these other services that we offer to students and sort of support those. So it's just, I guess, another mode of offering this academic support. So, for example, some of the academic skills workshops are fairly similar to some of the Steve mentioned, things like starting your assignment, writing better assignments, and we have corresponding resources in our Canvas site that can give further sort of support in these areas as well. And then they're easily accessible to students at any time. So one of the key things that I find, one of the key important roles of our online resources is to provide that academic support outside of our usual business hours as well. So when students are not able to seek advice from a learning advisor or from a peer skills advisor, for example, they are still able to access all of these resources online. So we can also, as I mentioned before, we do embed these into units. This is done through our senior learning advisors who are working within the schools. And we also have, links to things like our academic skills workshops, timetables for our drop-in sessions. We also have links to an online chat that is run by our peer skills advisors. So yeah, these are definitely some of the things that we are sort of offering in our online resource space. And it's also a great resource. So we can direct students to it as learning advisors. Our peers can direct students to these resources, and also academic staff can use this as a really valuable resource to know what these skills are and to direct students to as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Leah. So the next question I'm going to put up here, and Sue, Stephen, and Leah, just raise your hand if you want to tackle this one. What frameworks or learning theories guide the development of your online resources?
Do you want me to go? Okay. First of all, we felt very, very strongly that we didn't want this to be a content warehouse, like a dumping ground of information. We wanted students to have a learning experience when they visited the site, and we wanted them to have choice. So we wanted to be multimodal, so they could choose. If they prefer to download a PDF and read about reading skills, fine. But they could also choose to get that content through video, or they can go through the entire page and do the interactive practice activities and get the feedback there. So because of that, we decided we really needed a framework to design the materials which would be consistent across all of the modules. We chose Gagne's 9 events of instruction, and because it's really it's principled, it's simple, it's based on what we know about learning theory and how students develop skills, and it's provided a very useful step-by-step framework that we can use to create the materials. I won't go into all of that because that's probably a workshop in itself, but I mean, there's a lot out in the public domain published on this. But it also meant that I could create a wireframe that the other learning advisors who created materials could follow, and that guided them in their thinking. And some of them needed that. We had a lot of learning advisors who were really skillful at running workshops and individual consultations, but perhaps less experienced in materials writing and online design. So that framework has guided everything we've done. And that's my 2 minutes. There we go.
Other takers on
maybe
this?
I'll jump in. So I guess I'm going to follow on from Andrew Kelly's keynote speech earlier today. As he mentioned in his speech, at ECU, we're really undergoing a transformation in response to the challenges posed by the development of AI, as well as other challenges that have been affecting the higher education sector. And as part of this, we're really moving towards sort of social constructivist approach, where we want to understand that knowledge is co-created and that really effective learning takes place within a social environment together with other learners. So we're really right now at the moment, we are reimagining our learning support services and our online resources. And what we're aiming for is to create learning communities that our students can participate in, where they can learn from and with other learners. So in terms of our online resources and the development of our resources, this really means that we're looking at creating more resources based on self-regulated learning, also resources and workshops on how to demonstrate learning outcomes, as well as, and most importantly, how to use AI appropriately and ethically in their academic studies, and especially to help them to develop their learning skills. So that they're not replacing those skills, but we're using AI to help to develop those skills. And we really will be working together with students in this resource development, and especially with our peers, to develop resources that are guided by the student experience. And I guess there are, this is one of the key things that we're really focusing on, and really sort of making the most of the support that the peers can offer to students.
Great. Steve, you want to touch on this as well?
Very happy to. Yeah, so we're also reimagining our online resources as well, particularly the Study Success Toolkit for students. The Pathways to Success LMS for staff is, developing, is under development. But going back to the Study Success Toolkit, the initial framework was what we've referred to as a tiered learning support framework, where we have Tier 1 services and resources for all students, Tier 2 discipline-based support for selected cohorts, and Tier 3 additional support. Very originally, there was sort of this notion going way back to 2015 that perhaps students would sort of work their way through that framework, look at what's available online first, talk to the PACs, and then sort of guide themselves towards more intensive support. I think, we've really learned that that doesn't happen very often, and that it's a little bit problematic as well to provide study skills resources in a standalone form that is not connected to discipline-based study, as I think we've sort of heard already. So the sort of theoretical underpinnings of the Pathways to Success project are a little bit different, and they're looking at that's looking at three different dimensions of learning. So we've separated orientations, transitions, and literacies. And the idea is that things like connecting on campus, navigating the LMS, building self-efficacy and seeking help, these are all orientation skills that all students need at the beginning of their studies. And then, knowing that there's an academic integrity module and that academic integrity is a thing, using centrally learned resources like Studiosity and Grammarly, knowing where they are, what they are, and starting to use those. All of these come under what we are referring to as transitions. So that's another dimension. It starts at the beginning of semester and it can go all the way through. But when it comes to literacies, which includes skills like writing, reading, critical thinking, we view all of those as really necessarily, apart from very general introductions, needing to take place in a discipline context. So what we're looking at in reimagining these online resources is that the Study Success Toolkit, which is integrated with our PAC service, is really about orientations and transitions. But the Pathways to Success LMS site is about literacies, and that's where we work closely with discipline academics and under the guidance of ADLTs, who we have a close relationship with, to identify gateway units and to be developing resources in those contexts. So trying to make those quite sort of adaptable. And then the other sort of reimagining is AI and how we can integrate that into both of those sites. In fact, they both already have AI resources in there in the form of Moodle lessons. But in the Study Success Toolkit, those are introductory lessons on what AI is, AI ethics, and then in the Pathways to Success literacies-oriented site, where we're working with staff, the Moodle lessons are specifically developed for a particular unit to hopefully scaffold both academic literacy and AI literacy, or AI-assisted writing, in relation to the major assignment for that unit.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we're going to go on to the next question. Actually, I might stop for a moment right now and just get a gauge of emoticon. If you can put up some kind of hand or thumbs up. How many people attending here have online resources at their institution? Hi, just looking through quickly. Okay, quite a few hands are up. Okay, so maybe some institutions might be thinking, is this the way to go or go with AI? Don't know, but hopefully this talk can stimulate some discussions in your institutions. So number 4, what are some of the enablers or limiters to online resource creation in your context? We have touched on this a little bit already, so I'd like speakers to add on to what you said before if you'd like to elaborate.
If I think I mentioned before, Alice, that time is a limiter. We all experience this, that it's business as usual while we're working on this project. I was going to say the project that we worked on, I worked on it myself at CDU for 2.5 years, and it's still being worked on now. I left about 6 months ago, and the team is still building the site. And both Steve and Leah have mentioned about how Gen AI has necessitated a rethinking of the materials. So the team is having to go back into what we built and within each page create information or guidance and how Gen AI tools might facilitate your learning, and depending on what it is they're looking at in terms of maybe oral presentations or things. So that has been, so time really has been the big limiter. Funding also, I don't know how well funded your universities are, but we're using H5P, and because it's relatively cheap, cheaper than Articulate, and we were using Doodly to make videos because basically it was really cheap, and it's probably not the best tool. I'm really excited now to start using some of the Gen AI tools for creating videos and saving time that way. And that's something we are still, as a team, well, certainly at James Cook, getting our heads around how to use this so that we can be more efficient in our use of time and creating these materials. So that's a big limiter. In terms of enablers, having energetic, imaginative people who can put their mind together and come up with new ways to envisage something, you know, the same old skills, and how to make it interesting and engaging. And that, I think I've been really lucky to have great people around me to work on that. So that's
Stephen or Leah, would you like to speak on that point as well?
Yeah, sure, thank you. Yeah, so I guess, and again, sort of, I guess, repeating some of what I've said and carrying on from what Sue said, I mean, one of the major sort of limiters to resource creation is time, and having those resources. So it does, depend on the availability of our learning advisors in terms of time, and also how many learning advisors we have on the team at a particular point in time as well. And definitely the skill set of those learning advisors too. So, we do have some really highly skilled learning advisors on our team, but of course they are limited in some ways to, what areas of expertise they can kind of deliver and offer to the resource development. But I think, again, one of the biggest limiters is time, and especially during semester there's so much else going on, and I think what we really need is that sort of almost uninterrupted time, that focused time where we can create resources as well, without having so many interruptions and so on. So yeah, there are particular times of the year where it's more conducive to developing resources, unless we have assigned time to do this, which again is a little bit tricky during the semester, just because of the demand for all of our other services from students and meeting that demand. So I think really having that kind of dedicated focus time is really important, and also the time for our learning advisors to be able to upskill and participate in professional development, to feel that they are, confident and capable of kind of creating quality resources.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. We will get to that question. Our last question is about data. Somebody else put that in chat. But Steve, do you have something to say about this point?
Yeah, just quickly, I think the enablers have been the relationships that we have with learning designers and the library, and also the peer academic coaches that all have sort of workload available for creating learning resources. So particularly with the LMS site for students, that's been great. With the LMS site for staff, also, we've got a really good relationship with the ADLTs and who have put us in touch with academic staff. And we definitely do have a very positive orientation of academic staff towards support. I think just touching again on AI, I think that's one of the real sort of challenges, is in terms of, although the university has provided Copilot to all staff and students, and the policy of the university is we are embracing AI. It's up to each unit coordinator at this point whether they will be introducing AI or not, which is causes quite a bit of confusion. We're a long way away from a programmatic approach, I think, because of that. So the extent to which we'll be able to integrate AI within those resources that we develop, will really depend on the unit coordinator's sort of stance on that. But we do have certainly some large units that are embracing that. And so we're looking forward to be working with them. In fact, we recently got a Learning and Teaching Scholarship grant for a research assistant to assist in work with 1 or 2 units to embed AI into the learning support around their assessments. So really looking forward to seeing how that develops.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now for the question that people have been asking in chat, what kinds of evaluation and or learning analytics do you collect about the online resources? And what kinds of applications do you have for the data from evaluation learning analytics? Please jump in if you want to.
What do you mean by the last question, Alice, in terms of what kinds of applications do you have?
Sorry, how do you use the data that you gather? I suppose I should have said it in a simpler way.
I wasn't going to speak because I feel like I keep jumping in first. So, Steve, I just saw you unmuted yourself, so you go first.
Happy to do that. So we do, just as a matter of course, collect data analytics around the toolkit for students through the LMS. A lot of that is around usage and completion. There's also an evaluation survey that students have completed, which has been very positive. Although, I think there's limitations around those kind of surveys. Also with, I don't know if this is where we're sort of going into, but with Studiosity, Grammarly, our Epigeum academic integrity module, we collect usage data around all of those tools as well. With the project that I mentioned, we've got the grant. We're looking at using a design-based research approach. So the focus of that research is looking at what we're able to create for particular units in terms of those resources to support students in completing unit-based assessments. And in that case, we're looking at doing a pre and post survey with both students and staff, not just to gauge their confidence around the use of AI, but also with some more probing questions to really look into what were they able to use AI for in the sort of learning environment that we create, and what kind of both AI and not AI, because I think with AI assisted writing, we really need to look at the kind of skills that students can use AI for, but also obviously the skills that we don't want them to use AI for. But in both cases, really to get a sense of how did the learning environment we created increase their abilities in relation to particular literacy skills.
Sue, did you want to jump in there?
Okay. In terms of collecting data and learner analytics, the fact that a decision was made to place our materials on our public-facing website does have the disadvantage in that we don't have access to the learner analytics that you would get from an LMS. So that's a definite disadvantage. But what we can do, what we have done is tap into our data people at the university. They're able to tell us about the traffic into the site, which doesn't tell us what the students are experiencing once they're in there. But we have found since we redesigned the site that traffic into our materials, our website has increased by, in some cases, 125% within a very short time. So students are going there, but we are limited in that we can't see the progress through activities, and that is a downside. We can use heat maps through Google Analytics to see where the students are going and which activities are attracting their attention. And we've also used students, we've lured them in with money and gift cards to come and give feedback and that type of thing. But it's probably not as simple as if it was just built into an LMS in the first place. Oh, one thing that was done that I think was really useful is that one of the learning advisors collaborated with an IT lecturer, and they worked together to create a project, an accessible project in the IT course where a usability study was conducted by the students on the web page, and they wrote a report as part of their course, which was then provided to us, which gave us lots of really useful information. So that sort of collaboration is great. Okay.
Thank you. Leah, do you want to speak to this at all?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess as I mentioned before, we also house our resources on Canvas LMS, so we are able to sort of see from the background like what resources students are accessing, and how many students are accessing those resources. So we can sort of see that side of things. But I think as someone sort of popped into the chat, like it's really a lot of that kind of qualitative data that we really want to get as well. So, with the sort of development of resources that we're working on currently, where we really want to be seeing, can we help students to self-regulate their learning? Can they use AI appropriately and ethically? And, with this sort of development, we really, we're aiming to improve the student experience and to provide those learning communities where students can feel that they belong, that they're supported to successfully achieve their academic goals, as well as be prepared for their futures. And I think we really do need to be able to assess whether we are meeting those, very lofty goals as well. So, and whether we can do that through surveying students, through focus groups, that's something that we're still working on.
And all that, of course, takes more time and resources, like a qualitative study where you ask students, what did you do with the resource? What use of it? Have you made any changes in your behavior because of those kind of things?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We've come to the end of these questions, and there's some things on chat, but I'm sorry, I've lost track. So if anyone can point me to a particular question, or I ask that any of you unmute and ask the questions yourself.
I'll ask a question. I popped it in chat, Alice. And I think Leah sort of spoke to this a little bit, but sorry. The idea of how we track impact and effect, which is something I know we as a group not always, we frequently talk about. We gather quantitative stats and satisfaction evaluative information as well. We do get qualitative stuff in, but sort of longitudinal impact. How did engaging with this resource really help me down the track? And I know it's hard to get, but I'd love it to hear any insights any of the three of you have on that.
I tend to feel that those kind of impacts are really only going to be effectively measured in a discipline context where the resources have been used in relation to a particular discipline and particular tasks, and then looking at how that might have contributed towards students' progress. I feel that where we've got sort of standalone resources, it's going to be a lot harder to be making that kind of evaluation.
I can interject there too, because at ACU, we actually have a lot of online resources as well. We've done different things like embedded links as into different units as part of a university-wide project. We also have a set of feedback comments that we've developed for academics when they're marking in Canvas. And the academics can insert comments. I think other institutions have done this as well. Insert not only direct feedback that we create for them based on the most common types of issues, but also then link to our specific resources for students to feed forward and keep their development. So there are different ways we can think about how to maybe maximize the value of our generic resources at the same time trying to create more bespoke resources. So that's maybe one tactic as well. Any other questions or comments? Making resources easy to find. Yes, tapping into, I suppose, the other aspects of learning design, UX, usability. So I guess oh, sorry, Joel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about collecting data and feedback and any online responses that I give for using various different resources, often the go-to is in relation to this quality, do you agree or disagree 1 to 5? That is very easy to pin down as data, but how do you then encourage people to give individual feedback? I found this thing valuable. When I did this task, I struggled with this part of it. Are there ways that people are able to integrate into their use of AI that covers that area?
I think I could have a go at answering that. So just with the project that we've got some funding for, as I said earlier, really trying to create a pre and post survey that really gets to the uses of AI within a particular context, and to what extent students have feel that they're confident in using it for those particular tasks, those particular skills. If that answers the question. And just also with the earlier one that you wrote, that AI is useful for gaining a whole range of skills, but we may not necessarily want AI used for completing particular assessment tasks. I thought that was a really interesting question. I'm of the view that if it's a take-home assignment in any way that students have, they're going to be using AI. And therefore, I feel all take-home assessments need to be, you can use AI however you want and then evaluate it in some way, or there's some kind of additional reflection, which is what they're actually assessed on. And then we need to look at alternative assessments, which are totally secure, interactive orals, and so on. So I feel it's kind of our role to be really, really promoting students' confidence and competence in using AI.
There are also little tools you can use, going back to the question of, can you have any kind of way for students to assess? I know our math team have developed little instruments that they embed into their Canvas resource at the end, like a MS form, Teams form, or H5P self-evaluation. So little things that you can pop in at the end, and H5P actually can track analytics if you buy into the institutional license. So there could be little instruments, IT tools that can help with those kinds of things.
I think also, one of the things that we want to be able to assess whether we are kind of achieving the goals that we are setting out to achieve, and a lot of the support that we're trying to offer students in terms of using AI ethically and appropriately sort of is based on the fact that we are seeing a significant increase in the number of academic misconduct cases related to the either inappropriate use of AI or unacknowledged use of AI. So, perhaps we could sort of measure against some of these things if there is perhaps a reduction in the number of academic misconduct cases related to the use of AI. That would be something that we would definitely hope to see as well.
Any other questions? I'm sorry, I'm not able to see at a glance any raised hands.
Looks like there's a question I'm interested in. Teresa Balfour Brown asked at 12:45 about how Grammarly is being used at Murdoch University as a support resource. Is that part of would you consider that one of your tools, Steve?
Yeah, it is just made available to students. And we've also just recently entered into a contract with Studiosity to provide Writing Feedback Plus, which is their AI version. With Grammarly, we actually just make it available to students, but we have really, really high usage data. But with Studiosity, we've been doing that in a much more controlled fashion. We had a kind of a pilot to look at Studiosity Writing Feedback Plus. And we got pretty good feedback from students, and also pretty good evaluation from some academics that really looked at the feedback it gives, that it's actually pretty good. And where that's going to be really useful is that a lot of staff, as I said, don't want to use AI, but at least students will then have all students Writing Feedback Plus available to be able to give that feedback on language. Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer the question about Grammarly very well. We just make it available and it's popular.
So that could be another whole set of discussions around the use of Studios and Grammarly, those other tools. But I might stop here because we want to have 5 minutes for people to transit to the last session and the end of our symposium. Thank you very much for the speakers. I think one of the takeaways I got is everyone's considering how they're going to be using their online resources and reimagining what it could possibly do, and thinking about the costs and the resources needed for that. And that's going to be a continuing question, but thank you for starting this conversation today. So thank you all. And can we give a clap to the speakers or a virtual clap? Okay, so at this point, you have a 5-minute break if you want to come back to the last session.
Dr. Nguyen is the Academic Skills Team Leader at the University of Melbourne, where she leads the embedding of academic skills services into the curriculum. She holds a PhD in Language and Literacy Education from the University of Melbourne as well, and she's interested in wide reading and lifelong learning. So I let you with her. She's going to have her presentation, which is called Changing Partners, Dancing with the Disciplines in Embedding Academic Literacy in the Curriculum. Huh?
Thank you very much, Alex. And I'll just be sharing my screen. I have two, but I'm gonna share one only. Just bear with me one sec. Is it displaying correctly for everyone? Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. And before I begin, I also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I live and work, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I also want to extend my respects to any First Nations colleagues here today. And I hope you like dancing. It's okay if you don't. I used to go ballroom dancing. I took a course in ballroom dancing in my early 20s, and I stepped on people's toes all the time. And to be fair, they stepped on mine too. But this is not that kind of dancing. This is the dancing that we do in our day-to-day job, working with faculties and having to move fluidly between one class to the next, one subject to the next, sometimes one faculty to the next. So that's the kind of dancing we are seeing today. Over the course of 2024, I had 64 dances. That were 64 subjects and cohorts that I taught into in my work. And the number for the whole team, for my team, was 319 dances across the University of Melbourne. So let's talk about what we do, what I do in my practice, but also what I notice in other people's practices in the curriculum as well. So I started this work with a lot of curiosity. I had some leading questions for my ongoing work into curriculum embedding. And this question is really important, but the answer is more or less there in publications and in the keynote address that we had today. That embedding is really important because it makes academic literacy available to all students. So this is moving away from the deficit model that we saw a lot in the past and still see in certain situations and in certain institutions. So embedding is really important, and I think that's that's one thing that we can all agree on. But I haven't come up with satisfactory answers or sufficient answers to the other questions that I also had. What do we embed? What do we mean by embedding? What pedagogical approaches do we use in our work, right? People talk a lot about, how they collaborate with academics and other staff, and sometimes with students as well. But the nature of that pedagogy is unclear to me. And also what makes for effective embedding.
What are you laughing about?
Sorry, can people mute themselves? Thanks. So I'm going to share with you, in answer to these three questions, my work in progress in building like a framework or an approach to view what we embed into the curriculum in terms of the broad areas of academic literacy, my key learnings for 2024, but also it goes way back before that as well. I'm going to show you some examples, which I call dances, for some of the subjects that I've embedded services into this year to demonstrate this work, and some evaluation results to demonstrate whether this has been effective. So a caveat here, I'm not a paid researcher, even though I can be if I have more time. This work is a synthesis of my own practice and the practices that I know or have read about in the literature. So to begin today's presentation, I would like to highlight this inclusive model of academic literacy instruction proposed by Wingate 2015. And the book is put on the slide here, as you can see. And I really like this diagram of, this inclusive approach that took the best aspects of different schools of thought, different pedagogies that have been used in this area for some time. So this approach is basically based on genre approaches and also social practice approaches in the field. So those are the two things that I'm also building on in my own work. An analysis of genres in the discipline, and also observations of social practices embedded in the discipline. ESP stands for English for Specific Purposes. This was built on Halliday's linguistic theory, and it refers to the analysis of texts or genres in relation to the requirements of their specific contexts. And this school provides details into the structure and moves, the textual moves, or staging, whichever way you want to call it. An example of this is Swale's cars moves. So cars moves refers to the introduction of a thesis. There are three moves in this example: creating a research space, and then, creating the research space is what CAR stands for. And within that, there are three main moves: establishing a territory, establishing a niche, and then occupying the niche. So move analysis is a big thing with ESP and other genre-based approaches, which I also base my work on. The next acronym, the Sydney School, or SFL School, which stands for Systemic Functional Language, was also developed by Halliday. And this studies the links between language, form, and function in social context. It focuses on communicative purposes of texts, and examples of this genre of genres in this school of thought is the IMRAT, a lab report structure. And for those of you who don't know that acronym, IMRAT stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. And we use that a lot, right? RGS stands for Rhetorical Genre Studies. It focuses on rhetorical actions and social roles and context. So these are quite similar. The thing that stands out from the Sydney School is the teaching learning cycles, or they call it scaffolding. I think scaffolding is what we are familiar with. And the idea is to, teach in stages rather than just dumping everything all at once. So we've got the deconstruction stage. This is genre analysis with students through models. And there's the joint construction stage with teachers and peers working in groups. And then there's the independent construction stage with a lot of independent work on the students' part. The next acronym, this is the only slide with acronyms, right, is the academic literacies with the S at the end, academic literacies school and critical EAP school. These are critical frameworks for viewing a discipline and the learner's identity in it. These schools study academic socialization and the important link between reading to understand the field and reading to write in the field, and writing as an act in itself. So these cover the basis of this inclusive approach. And in terms of the content or methodology being proposed by Wingate, there are five principles here. Sorry, just four principles here. The first principle is about the methodology. So there's a focus on genres and their social context, a focus on the communicative purpose of texts and exemplars. And then there are three other principles to do with the context. This is the social part of pedagogies. Available for all students. Currently, we don't have that, unfortunately. So I think we cover like half of our student population of Melbourne, not all of them. And making academic literacy available for all students will require embedding our services into all subjects across the board. Principle 3 is that embedding needs to be, academic literacy instruction needs to be subject integrated, so embedded, right, in a disciplinary context to be effective. And it needs to be based on collaboration. So this is the relational aspect of all practitioners working with academics and students, student leaders in the field to co-create resources or even deliver services together. Okay, so that is the framework that I'm basing my work on. Now, to answer my first question, what do we embed? This is my work in progress, right? This reflects my own view and my synthesis of practices across the board and a literature review that I did as well. But overall, I see that these are the areas that we embed into the curriculum. The first area is information, digital and AI literacies. What is it? This is my definition based on what I've read and seen in the fields that we're in. So task-focused evaluative judgment of quality in research, reading and writing activities. And this connects to what Justin talked about as well, about, AI and using it to really practice evaluative skills. And some examples that I thought of were appropriate use of Gen AI in writing, reviewing the literature as well, using digital tools for note-taking and writing, critical thinking in dealing with these tools. Second big area that I see is disciplinary discourse engagement, and that means the very genre-specific side of things. Effective use of reading strategies for different purposes, active understanding and use of disciplinary concepts and language. And some examples are dynamic reading skills, using instrumental just to extract information, critical to actually evaluate information, and aesthetic reading stances. And aesthetic reading here is based on Louise Rosenblatt and her idea of aesthetic reading. It's true for literature and it's true for other fields as well, because we need to have a lived experience of reading in order to enjoy it and sort of get the most out of it as well. Another example is appropriate use of disciplinary vocabulary, but there are other examples which I couldn't fit into this slide. The next broad skills that I saw in the field is communication skills, and those cover linguistic, cultural, and social capabilities that enable effective participation in learning activities, group work, and social life. And these are the examples that I can give: giving peer reviews, developing intercultural competencies, speaking and presenting, responding to feedback, improving English language skills. Learning to learn is about metacognitive skills like reflective practice, growth mindset, self-directed learning, self-management, and all that. Meaning making and knowledge construction is about having a voice, finding your own voice, I guess, making inferences and interpretations, capabilities to add to knowledge, especially true for graduate researchers and graduate students in general, but also apply insights learned to improve or transform one's own life. And I see that as an essential thing in learning, but we don't perhaps talk about these things at this level. So hopefully this gives a comprehensive overview of what it is that we are teaching students. It's not just techniques, right? Not study skills for exams or writing a particular assignment, but it goes to the epistemological understanding of, what it takes to be a learner, right? What it means to learn something and to know something. So again, this is based on my literature review work on what constitutes academic literacy, and a synthesis of a wide range of practices, including my own. Okay, later I'll be sharing with you how the examples that I'm showing reflect these areas of skills. So before that, I would like to share some learnings with you. Sorry, just a sip of water. The first learning is the literacies embedded may slide along a continuum from general principles to specific genres, depending on what the students need at strategic points in time, versus my prior thinking that was embedded literacies always need to be genre specific. Actually, the data that I've got said no, actually some foundational skills are really necessary, especially for foundational subjects. So it really depends on what the subject needs from us and what the students need as well. Second learning, in contrast to my prior belief, is LMS resources are highly reusable and recyclable across semesters and subjects, but establishing and maintaining good relationships, either with, our library partners or with the academics, especially with the academics, tends to be key in this reusing and recycling, versus my prior belief that a resource needs to be built and reserved for just one subject to be effective. And maintaining good relationships doesn't have to take too long, right? Sometimes it's just a coffee catch-up. Sometimes it's just an email asking gently, is there anything that I can change about the module? Are you thinking about using the module next semester? And usually, overwhelmingly, the response is, no, I'm very happy with it as it is, and they roll it over. So I tend to do that at the end of each semester or beginning of the next one. The next learning is generative AI could provide a great entry point into new subjects and could be used to discuss discipline-specific expectations and genres in depth, versus my prior beliefs, swinging from one, end to the other. What's the point, right? What's the point of giving writing advice now that AI can do the job? Or that fake thing, really? I don't want to talk about it at all. Now I've discovered that it's okay to go the middle way, that actually Gen AI could provide a really meaningful entry into subjects because everyone is interested in this. And if I go in there and deliver something, maybe that could begin a meaningful conversation about discipline expectations. Is AI, delivering that? How can AI deliver on that? And what's the student's role in that work? Number 4, getting academics and students to collaborate on preparing or delivering a resource or service by providing Discipline-specific advice and exemplars is one of the most effective and enjoyable embedding methods. So I've enjoyed working with students in the subject to, talk about exemplars coming also from students. And of course, to work with academics to build resources and sometimes co-deliver services in the discipline. And I'll show you an example of the work that I did in a big subject that made it impossible for me to go into class like 150 times a week. So I built a resource for tutors to use and deliver in their class. This contrasts my prior belief that academics and students in a subject are just end receivers or consumers of all services. I never consciously thought so, but I think I worked in that way, that once I drop a resource in a subject, that's the end of the story. They should embrace it, and if they don't, well, it's their fault. But actually, relationship, I found, is absolutely at the foundation of everything. Okay, so 4 learnings, and I'll revisit these throughout and at the end as well. Now, as I promised, I'm going to share with you 5 examples, 5 dances that I moved between. Of course, I had other dances, but these are the examples that I'm sharing today. For a big first-year subject, as I said, I couldn't go in to the tutorial every week. Because the subject in semester 1 had like more than 3,000 students and something close to 600 in semester 2. So I worked with the head tutors and the subject coordinators to build learning resources for students on their LMS, and the tutors delivered these learning resources in class, in their class. And I think this is as integrated as it could get. Apart from LMS resources for students and for tutors to use in class, I also developed a lesson plan for tutors with a slide deck if they chose to use it. I also developed a video guide through those materials with my library partner. So this is called active learning, an active learning framework for the students, because they are first-year students, and all first-year commencing students at Melbourne in a faculty will need to go through what we call a discovery subject in each faculty, and this is the discovery subject for science. So practically, it catches all commencing students in science. And this setup was put into the week 2 tutorial site, Canvas site, and we used Canvas as our LMS. And it fitted in this week because the topic of the week was the role of individuals and teams in science, a very generic entry point for students. And we worked with the library, myself, and the subject coordinators worked together to come up with this setup. And there's a breakdown of what the behaviors expected of students in order to show those skills, the skills to engage, the skills to apply knowledge, and the skills to reflect on knowledge with regards to the content, with regards to their practice, like lab and things like that, with regards to other people, right? And how they can apply those skills to themselves as well in terms of self-reflection and self-monitoring. So from what I shared earlier, this shows learning to learn, that category of skills that we are delivering very early in this subject. This is still in the same big first-year subject. We also built together what we call a writing spectrum. And this suits the cohort, I guess, because this is the first time they come into writing as a practice, right? And they need to know the different purposes for writing in the discipline, going from writing to learn as the novice, as a novice learners, as a new learner, to writing to inform as a more professional learner. So along this scale, we noted that it could be, anything from note-taking, simple dot points, to brainstorming, to, using sources in a few sentences just to practice paraphrasing or other skills, up to reports, reviews, essay writing, etc. And of course, we've got the lay audience genres as well, but we didn't cover this in this subject. So the way the scaffolding worked in this subject was from week 2 to 5, we focused on writing to learn, the reflective side of things, and note-taking and using sources and all that. From week 6 onwards, students focus on academic writing, writing for an audience. And they enjoyed it a lot, as will be testified to by the evaluation data that I'm showing you very shortly. So this is, again, learning to learn because of the need of this commencing cohort. But also a little bit of meaning making, right? Because it's about reflecting on their day, reflecting on what they've learned so far in the week. And we gave them weekly reflective writing tasks through H5P. Okay, so as promised, I'll leave you a moment to read this. So it's not true that in faculty embedding, foundational skills are not needed. They are needed, right? If we scaffold them in a way that students engage with them and that tutors engage with them, I think we have a great opportunity to embed those essential skills in a space that connects to everyone. Now, dance number 2, undergraduate and graduate subjects, and this is across different year levels and different subjects, because there were a lot of requests for Gen AI advice, and we developed resources on Gen AI. Me individually, or we as a team, we developed resources as needed by subjects. And we also delivered sessions on generative AI and writing as well within the embedded program. So my learning is Gen AI doesn't have to be shallow. It is shallow, but we can make it deep, right? Depending on how we approach it. It is fake, but we can make it real by the way we approach the discussion around tasks and things like that as well. So for me, this is the first group of literacies that I showed you earlier: information, digital, and AI literacies. So this is the what, right? And I'm showing you also the how, and how the how supports the what. Dance number 3 is a core graduate coursework subject, also in science, because that's the faculty that I know best. I work in a liaison role with that faculty. So this example is for assignment 1, a literature review, which is 20% of the total grade. I created embedded resources, which were literature review module embedded into the LMS. The same module was also used by many other subjects. And I'm going to show you a worked exemplar in an assignment brief, the assignment brief for assignment 1. So we embedded right in the assessment space itself. I'm using student genres because it connects more to students than an expert genre would. So I got permission to show you this one, a student exemplar, which was used as an assignment model for the subject. And you would have noticed the yellow balloons, and those are what the academics and my own feedback looks like. So I worked extensively and intensively as well with that academic on different subjects, but particularly on this exemplar. And we came up with a system where we both contributed to, analyzing why this is an effective exemplar. I know the literature says it'll be great to compare a bad example and a good example, but this is all we got in that subject. So we had to make do. But probably next year, we can try to find a bad example as well. So it shows disciplinary discourse engagement. If students sort of go through all these comments, they are actively analyzing for themselves, right? And evaluating why are these comments being left in these sections? Is there evidence in this paragraph to support that comment and all that? And they would apply, hopefully, the same thinking to their own writing as well. So that's what I did in that subject. Another subject, dance number 4, was a capstone subject, also in science. In this subject, students were required to write a state of knowledge report, which is 50%. And this genre is an intersection of expert and student genres, because the academics wanted students to emulate an industry or government report, which is also a state of knowledge report. So this is a nice intersection. And there was a lot of reason for me to use both expert exemplars and student exemplars. So I use both. So this is an expert exemplar used in the LMS module, which was also used in class. And it shows, the genre analysis side of things. So these are textual moves according to Swale's model. And it shows, the skills that I was hoping to embed into that subject, which was disciplinary discourse engagement. The idea was that students would be able to go through these activities and apply the same moves to their own writing. So there were 2 other levels of genre analysis that I applied in that same module. So we talked about textual moves before. The next level was discourse semantic level, which is shown in the organizing information part of this module, which is not showing here, but I could only choose one. But I practically just showed an example showing them the analytical themes and the relationship of these themes to the argument. And this is the sort of linguistic, lexical-grammatical level where I engaged them in this H5P, just clicking on the verbs, adjectives and verbs that show critical evaluation. So I'm sharing this example because it comes from an expert government published report, and I didn't have to ask for permission for that one. So it shows disciplinary discourse engagement, again, at different levels of genre analysis and meaning making. When we think about critiquing ideas, right? When we think about, interpreting ideas, we think about meaning making for the students themselves. Okay, so the last category, I think I hadn't touched on this before, but it's so common, right? We all do this, communication skills, English skills, and all that presentation. This is for a poster presentation module in class. I used this example in the module, and then I delivered it in class as well to facilitate a class discussion on how to notice, how to be an ethnographer of the field. And I really like that idea from Wingate's model. Students need to become ethnographers of their fields to start to notice, right, and observe the conventions, the way people talk, the way people think, the way ideas are formed and communicated in the discipline. It's not simply study skills. It's not simply, using informative headings, even though those things are very important. This is about, observing how ideas are constructed, structured, and communicated for different audiences. It's a very hard thing to do. But with the module and the in-class activities, we were able to raise that awareness in students. Okay, so sorry, 5 dances, and I'm aware that I'm running out of time. So just in the last 5 minutes, I'm just showing you some evaluation results that we got. So these are for the whole team across the 15 of us, or 10 or 15 of us doing embedding work. But I've noticed a lot of comments about, you know, the way we work with academics. They welcome us. Actually, they will see us as a pleasure to work with, and which is a pleasure in itself. And this last but one comment in particular works with us. They work with us. They work with us each year, repeated 3 times. It means how much these academics, which who we usually think of as very difficult to work with, actually want to work with us. And they appreciate our approach. Fantastic to deal with. So yeah, lots of relational stuff. And next to that, we've got how tailored the stuff that we did was, how it spoke directly to the disciplines. And next to that, we've got the benefits to students being felt by students and academics themselves. So I don't have time to show you all of the evaluations that we have, but what works based on our evaluation results are 5 things. First of all, we need to be easy to work with. We need to be responsive and proactive. People don't need to like us, but they need to not dislike us. They need to like us enough to be able to work with us. Because I think, and it's true for everyone, people don't care what we know until they know that we care. And based on that foundation, we've got subject, expert, and student co-construction in terms of providing discipline-specific, advice and exemplars. And number 3 is tailored content, the work that we do in collaboration with them, including exemplars, engaging delivery or activities set up for tutors, both online and in person. For me, these are the what's and the hows, and they speak to the why at the center, that we are addressing a wide range of learning needs, from foundational to assessment-specific, genre-specific skills. So, relearnings, 5 things, which I'm not going to read aloud, 4 things which I'm not going to read aloud again. And we'll have a discussion after this, so I would love to know how you think about these points. Do you think the same? Do you want to differ? What has your own experience told you about embedding? For me, some future work will need to be done. I'll try to continue to make academic literacy needs visible to academics and the institution. I think visibility is key, right, to anything that we do. We need to be visible. Those needs need to be visible to everyone. Increase the reading focus in our work. I did a tally of all the skill categories that we delivered into subjects, and like 80% of all our services were about writing in one form or another, and just 1% focused on reading. And as we all know, reading is both reading to read and reading to write, speak very powerfully to academic socialization, speaks powerfully to, how students could become members of their discipline. Unfortunately, there's a lot of work to be done in that, with that imbalance. And I'll continue to advocate academic literacy as not just an add-on, but as an integral part of disciplinary teaching and learning. Adopt an inclusive English as an international language discourse in embedding work, which is something that I'm working on as well, but more to come. Strengthen psychological flexibility to keep moving towards these values. So these are my values, and hopefully they're yours as well. Or you might have your own versions of these. But I found in our sort of work, flexibility is really important within ourselves, right? So sort of whatever we can do to make pivots, but also to keep moving in those towards those values. And normally people would not have trouble compromising. So if we are happy to compromise, the other people would be so as well. Okay, I think I'm on time. Alex, would you like to lead the discussion? Are there any questions for me, or would you like to pick up on these questions that I put on the screen?
Thank you so much. There are some questions from the audience. So Anna asked, could you please give examples of how Gen AI can be used effectively upon entry point without causing any confusion?
I guess I'm not coming at it from the academic integrity perspective. That's for the university to do. So it's an it's an institutional thing. Talking about policies and things, yes, we do link to those policies, but we tend to take a more educative approach, talking about the value of writing for yourself, for example, and when something is a value. If you make people see the value of something, you don't need to justify it any further, because, people can always ask why is it important? But sometimes things matter because they matter to us, right? And value is at the root of the justification tree. You can't go any further, It's valuable because it is, because I care. That's my point. So yeah, trying to give that message of value of learning, not just study skills, but learning for yourself, learning for your growth, and trying to get people to discuss the value of that for themselves. I think that always works.
Sue asks, or she would like to see examples of how you collaborated with students creating exemplars.
Yeah, so usually I got exemplars, usually through the academics, but also this is for cohorts rather than subjects, for a school rather than just a subject within that school. I would work with some student ambassadors in that school to maybe co-deliver workshops, but I would love to do that more. Yeah. Admittedly, that work is very limited to just co-delivering, co-planning perhaps, and co-delivering, but not quite writing exemplars. I've got exemplars of apps that students use to take notes and to sort of write, but not artifacts themselves.
Okay. Anna has a very practical question. Who read or marked the weekly writing tasks?
Yeah, so we received some feedback on that. We don't have enough staff to do that, and it's not our role. And when I sent some samples to the head tutors, they said nothing. The only thing that they ever said was, "This is fascinating." End of story. They didn't mention anything about, me handing over all that H5P submissions to their tutors to mark. No, there's no marking in that space. Yeah, but AI might provide some solutions, who knows?
Another question is, how important is integrating content and language in embedding work? What can we learn from CLIL, CBI, and EMI? I guess content and language integrated learning, content-based instruction, and EMI, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it depends on how you define it, I guess. We are doing some sort of that already, some version of that already. But yeah, I would love to explore more that concept. I think more recently I've heard of different schools of thought in academic literacies. I haven't really heard of content and skills integrated learning. Maybe that's more for the school sector, but definitely something that we can learn from. Sue, would you like to contribute in that respect?
I think CLIL, like EMI, is a really, really interesting area that can inform some of our work. I know that it developed out of schools, but is now been embraced in various universities, especially universities that have English as a medium of instruction overseas. And a number of the universities here in Australia deliver CLIL support programs for universities in countries like Japan or Taiwan. I'm not involved in that sector, that area now, although I used to be. And the learning, the sort of lecturer development and the lecturer support that comes out of CLIL training programs is really interesting. But that's a huge area and probably a whole other presentation.
Thanks, Sue. I'll make sure that I explore that area a bit more.
There's another question. With an active embedding context taken at Melbourne, what is the place of broader foundational courses like US college style programs?
Yeah, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not on top of that because I take care of my area, which is, curriculum embedding in the university curriculum rather than foundation courses. But I've read articles about it and I've seen some very positive results linking up those studies with university support. Steve, do you know anything about
Steve asked
that? Oh, sorry. He asked the question.
Me?
Maybe something for us to think about.
What was the question?
Your question.
Oh, oh my God, I'm so
your own
sorry.
question.
It's nearly 3 o'clock on a hot day. Foundational programs, it's just that we have dabbled in these at UniMelb in terms of introducing foundational subjects into programs. And I kind of there's a lot of things about the US model which I'm not a big fan of, but the foundational college program I think offers a lot before students articulate then into university. And I'm wondering if we can learn anything from that idea of building foundational skills before they go on to higher level of study. I guess
I wonder as well.
Yeah.
I'll write it down and wonder about it some more later. Thanks.
Lots of wondering.
There is one more question. Do we or should we assess insights students incorporate into their own lives? And how does this relate to what we evaluate and focus on in our role as AALL practitioners, thinking back to Andrew Kelly's presentation at the beginning of the day?
So, is it about online engagement of students?
No, it's about... Joel, would you like to elaborate? Joel is around. Joel was around.
So Alex, which was the question again?
Do we or should we assess insights students incorporate into their own lives? And how does it relate to what we evaluate in our role?
I'm sorry, I misheard before. Yeah, okay.
So I thought that was an important point to be making. But given the limitations of the way we do assessment, how would we go about evaluating that? And in particular, how would we use things like big data as a way of doing that?
Wow, that's really interesting. I guess asking for people's perspectives, students' perspectives through evaluations, adding that question about, how have you or how are you planning to apply this skill in your studies and beyond, probably outside of your studies as well. But we haven't been able to do that. But yeah, thanks. It's a very thought-provoking question. Because meaning making is a huge thing, right? And people attend university because they want something meaningful, not just to sit exams. Obviously, no one's at university just to sit exams, but to get something useful from it for their careers and their lives. Yeah, I think part of it could be seen through reflective writing tasks as well, and discussions, of course, if they are well facilitated. But yeah, it's an ongoing thing, and I'm afraid the only thing practical we can do is to maybe set up a self-efficacy scale thing for them to come away with. So they could monitor their own meaning making. I don't know. Do other people have other ideas? I'd love to hear from your experiences as well. Oh, Joe, sorry, now that I still have you on my screen, do you have an idea how to do that? The measurement of meaning.
So the issue I was talking about, the measurement of meaning, I think probably focus groups are one way that we have of doing that, but how you would get a university to contribute funding and time into having a focus group with every student, individual group as part of their assessment program, I don't know. And it's also, it's that whole thing. I made comments earlier about how valuable is generic AI or generic, when that was raised as part of what our initial presentation was talking about, what should we be focused on as student learning advisors? My suggestion there is that we've killed generic arts degrees as a way of thoughtful approaches to life, and we've gone very specifically for professional degree programs. And I think that's unfortunate, because then we move students away from looking at what they learn as being something they can apply in their real life, beyond it actually getting them a job. And I think that's a major issue.
It is true.
Thank you, Ha. This has been like, I think it's important to highlight the role of our job in embedding, which is one of the most time intensive aspects of us as ALL practitioners. So with this, I thank you again. Let's thank her for her very engaging presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
And I'll continue. Steve, you can continue to wrap up the day.
Thank you very much. Look, we've just got a couple of things I won't stretch this out. I think we're all hot, and probably like the Larson cartoon, my brain is full. I need to be excused. So, you know, we've been challenged today by Andrew. I thought that was a really thought-provoking keynote, one of the most thought-provoking keynotes I've heard in a while, to be honest. We've discussed the ubiquitous AI. It's all around us and everywhere. Resource development, which is, you know, sometimes shuffled off to the background, you know, in the workshop and the one-to-one work we do, but it's so important. And then I love that dance metaphor that Ha presented, the embedding context to us. So I really resonated with me, because, you know, finding a partner, the uncertainty there, learning the moves, the metaphor really did work perfectly. Look, the attendance today has been brilliant. We really appreciate the PD committee. It's not just me. There's 5 of us involved here. Myself, Alex, Huifang, Alice, and Sue. Really appreciate it. And on Sue, I'm going to hand over to her for a moment, because she's got something to tell you all about the conference next year. Sue.
So, thanks very much, Steve. We're going to make an announcement about next year's conference, and in order to do so, I'm going to show you a very brief video of the destination. If you already know the destination, keep it to yourself. Pop it into chat as soon as you've guessed where you're going to be next year. Okay. Okay, so a lot of people said Cairns, nearly, but Townsville. Joel got it first, got right first. You win nothing. I was going to say you get a free conference, free conference registration, but congratulations. Okay, so the conference will be face-to-face next year, and it will be, oops, excuse me. Can you see that screen?
Yep.
Can you see the slide? Awesome. Okay, so my screen's playing up. We will be at James Cook University in Townsville next year. Almost 1 year exactly to the day. It will be our first face-to-face conference since 2019. So we understand that a lot of universities are tightening their belt now, but we hope that as many people as possible will be able to come to Townsville, because we really want to see your faces again, and we want to get in a room and talk, because it is a fantastic opportunity for us to exchange. So connect, collaborate, and create. Welcome to Townsville next year. More details will become available early in the new year. So there you go.
How good is that? Gee, I was wrong on my guess. So looking forward, hope we can get some funding to go up there. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I won't keep us all any longer. I think 3 o'clock is a great point at which to cut the day off. Thank you so much. I just want to acknowledge my fellow committee members again. Great work. You guys are really, really, really good. We're trying our best to bring some quality PD to, and I think we do it. So everybody have a great weekend, a great extended break, and we will see you in 2025.